Hey guys, tonight we journey back through fragrant, shadowy alleyways, through steam-wreathed bathhouses and echoing mosque courtyards, to a time when a single sip of coffee could earn you jail time. Or worse. You're in Istanbul. The 16th century is in full swing, and something strange is bubbling just beneath the surface of Ottoman society. The air smells roasted, rich, slightly smoky. It's evening, and you're trudging slowly past a crooked row of wooden shops, their lanterns swinging gently in the breeze. From an open window above, someone's singing a tune in a language you don't know, and a thin trail of bluish incense snakes out over your head. You follow the scent, that odd earthy perfume you can't quite name, and it leads you straight to a small room filled with low stools, thick laughter, and a faint clinking of copper cups. This is your first Ottoman coffee house. There's a warm murmur to the place, the kind that invites you to sit and do absolutely nothing. A group of old men lean over a board game, one of them slapping down a piece with such satisfaction it makes the others groan. You catch bits of conversation about politics, marriage, fishing, and dreams. Nobody's rushing. Even time feels slower here. A copper tray slides your way, and you stare down at your first Ottoman-style coffee. Thick, black, unfiltered, and steaming slightly like some forbidden potion. No milk, no sugar. It's bitter, beautiful, and absolutely not allowed, not under certain sultans at least. You take a sip. Mistake? Maybe. You probably won't survive this, or at least not without attracting a little imperial attention. But too late now. The warmth slides into your chest. It's not just coffee, it's resistance, it's culture, it's gossip in liquid form. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Always curious who else is wandering through time with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The coffee doesn't hit right away. First, there's the ritual. The host, grey-haired, wide-eyed, with a mustache that looks like it could whisper state secrets, carefully pours the dark liquid from a long-handled pot into tiny porcelain cups without handles. The ground sinks slowly. You're not supposed to drink all the way to the bottom. That's for fortune-telling, or foolish tourists, or both. There's no music, just the shuffling of slippers on rugs, a spoon stirring slowly, the occasional crackle from the brazier, keeping the kesve warm. You let yourself melt into the quiet, but your eyes drift to the corner where two young men stop talking as soon as a figure walks past the window, a flicker of panic. One of them discreetly pulls a curtain shut. You hear a word whispered, sipahi, a cavalryman, or maybe something else. You've wandered into dangerous territory. Not because the coffee is poisoned. It's not. It's just illegal. Kind of. Sometimes. You see, the Ottoman relationship with coffee was complicated. Introduced through Yemen and the Arabian Peninsula, coffee caught on like wildfire in Istanbul in the mid-1500s. By then, the Ottomans had conquered vast territories, ruled millions, and boasted one of the most sophisticated court cultures in the world. But somehow, this tiny bitter bean rattled the empire more than any foreign war. Historians still argue whether the bans on coffee were purely about religion, or if they masked something deeper: control, anxiety, class tension, maybe a bit of everything. But for now, none of that matters. You're in the moment, in a city that's quietly addicted to the forbidden, and you're part of the secret. The man next to you, he's got a crimson sash and a look that says he used to be important, leans over and murmurs. The trick is not being obvious. Never sip when the muezzin calls prayer. Never sip too loud. You nod, even though you have no idea what the rules are yet. But you can feel them, like invisible lines drawn across the floor. You're walking a tightrope between pleasure and punishment. The fire crackles. Someone pours another round. Nobody's rushing. Coffee here is not fast. It's slow, heavy, unfiltered. Like memory, and still, the air carries tension. Because every now and then, a scream in the distance reminds you, not all sultans tolerated these little gatherings. Not all nights ended this gently. There were raids, arrests, even beatings, for coffee. You take another sip anyway, because, well, it's worth it. A shadow passes the doorway, and everyone freezes. The owner coughs loudly, and 2 cups disappear under a blanket. A brass tray vanishes under a cushion. Even the fire dims. Somehow, you sit up straighter, unsure if you're supposed to look afraid or indifferent. You settle for sleepy. The figure continues walking. Everyone exhales. Someone chuckles and says, "False alarm, just Yusuf. He's looking for his cat again." There's a quiet ripple of laughter. But you've felt the edge now. You know this isn't just about caffeine. This is about surveillance, control, and the joy of defying both in the gentlest way possible. You lean back again. The coffee grounds are cooling now. You'll have to remember not to drink the sludge, unless you want to see your future. Someone points to your cup and says, "You'll be rich soon, or dead, or married." Hard to say. The coffee isn't sure yet. You laugh, even though you're not sure if it was a joke. And just like that, you've stepped into the old Ottoman dance, between indulgence and obedience, between shadow and flame, between one sip and the next. The story of how coffee even got here, this far north, this deep into the Ottoman Empire, starts not in Istanbul, but in the mountains of Ethiopia. There, nestled among the wild greenery and scattered goats, a legend brews almost as rich as the drink itself. You follow this story now, drifting in time and place, your senses hazy like steam rising from a fresh pour. Picture a goat herder named Kaldi. Yes, Kaldi. He's got wiry arms, a walking stick, and a bunch of unruly goats hopping around like they just got back from a sugar binge. He notices something strange. Whenever the goats nibble on the berries of a particular shrub, they start dancing. Literally. Hopping, bleating, doing their little goat jigs. Kaldi tries the berries himself, because why not? And suddenly, he's buzzing too. Alert, euphoric, wide awake, ready to organize a goat talent show. Historians still argue whether Kaldi ever existed, or whether he's just a sleepy tale meant to amuse overworked monks. But what matters more is that this story gets passed along, and the beans, now roasted, ground and boiled, begin their slow pilgrimage through Arabia into the hands of Sufi mystics in Yemen. You float down to the docks of Mocha, where merchants, in long white robes, carry sacks of dark brown beans onto creaking ships. The harbour is busy, noisy, fragrant. Spices, perfumes, dates, incense, and now coffee trade hands in the hustle of everyday empire. The Sufis, deeply spiritual seekers, embrace coffee like a divine gift. It helps them stay awake during long midnight devotions. The whirling, chanting, sleepless worship needs a companion, and coffee becomes just that, a ritual, a spiritual tool, a silent partner in their conversations with the divine. You can almost hear the music, soft drums, lilting flutes, as the Sufis sip in candlelight. The cups are small, the room dim, but the energy, electric. From Yemen, coffee travels northward, slowly, like a secret whispered from village to village. By camel, by cart, by clever merchant. It crosses deserts, rivers and borders. And finally, by the mid-1500s, it arrives in Istanbul. You arrive with it. At first, it's just a curiosity, something exotic, something the court physicians are suspicious about. But the aroma, that deep, earthy aroma, pulls in people from every part of the city. Within a decade, the first official Ottoman coffee houses appear, and the game changes. These aren't places to rush through. These are temples of conversation. The walls are often painted in soft colours, the floors covered in thick woven rugs. Cushions line the edges. Men sit low, in circles, drinking, talking, playing chess, telling jokes. You hear a story about a man who swallowed a whole egg to impress a merchant and never walked the same again. Another tells of a pigeon who once interrupted a sermon by nesting in the imam's turban. Coffee houses become the Ottoman Empire's favourite gossip delivery, service. But more than that, they become forums, centres of informal politics, of debate, of poetry recitals and shadow puppetry. And the government? It starts to notice. You're sitting now in one of these coffee houses, perched near the window, with a view of the Bosphorus glinting in the distance. There's a chess game 3 feet away, and someone's reciting a verse that rhymes sandal with scandal. It's a gentle chaos, people quietly breaking the monotony of their lives with caffeine and commentary. But as you glance at the doorway, something shifts in the air. You overhear the word kahwa, the Arabic name for coffee. It used to mean wine, and now it raises suspicions. If the Prophet forbade wine, some argue, maybe he would have banned this too. After all, it stimulates the mind, keeps you up at night, makes you talk too much. Some jurists declare coffee to be haram, forbidden. Others defend it as a harmless plant with miraculous powers. Still others shrug and say, depends who's listening. That uncertainty, that delicious ambiguity keeps people talking, keeps people sipping. Even as the Grand Mufti issues contradictory opinions and local imams argue whether coffee leads to sin or just long conversations. Back in your coffee house, an old man sips slowly and says, if talking too much is a sin, I'm already doomed. He chuckles. You chuckle with him. The truth is, the Ottomans are both fascinated and frightened by coffee. It wakes people up, not just literally, but politically, socially, spiritually. It gives the poor man a voice, the merchant a stage, the poet a captive audience. In a tightly controlled empire, that's risky. And so, even as more coffee houses open, pressure builds, not from the people, but from the top. You'll soon learn, power doesn't like things it can't monitor. And the bean, oh, it's watching. You walk out now, into the narrow lanes of the bazaar. Someone's grinding beans in a corner stall. The aroma is hypnotic. You pass by young boys delivering trays of coffee through crowds. You hear debates in Arabic, Turkish, Armenian, Greek. This city is a mosaic, and coffee, it unites them all. But that unity worries the empire's rulers. Soon, you'll feel the chill of a new law creeping in, one that turns coffee from sacred, drink to secret sin. But for now, you keep walking, you follow the scent. By the time you reach the third coffee house of the day, yes, you're allowed more than one, assuming no one's watching. The city has changed. Not physically, not in its crooked minarets or clattering carts, but in mood. You feel it in the pace of the footsteps, in the way shopkeepers whisper instead of shout. Something's off. You push open the wooden door to the coffee house and step into the familiar haze of roasted grounds and slow-moving stories. But the laughter, muted, the games, packed away, and that man who used to juggle dates while reciting dirty poetry. Now he just nods solemnly from the corner. Something is different. Someone mutters under their breath. Sultan Murad is watching. You've just crossed into the shadow of the reign of Sultan Murad IV. A man who, depending on who you ask, was either a genius reformer or a caffeinated nightmare. Born in 1612, he came to power at a time of chaos, internal rebellions, foreign threats, religious squabbles, and yes, too many opinions per cup. So what does Murad IV do? He tries to restore order, one ban at a time. Alcohol, gone. Tobacco, banned. Coffee, absolutely not. You glance at your steaming cup and suddenly feel like you're holding contraband. You are. Historians still debate whether Murad's crackdown was truly about morality or more about control. After all, the coffee houses were becoming centers of subversion. People weren't just drinking, they were talking, plotting, reciting poems that didn't rhyme with loyalty. One night, Murad himself, supposedly disguised in rags and a cloak, wandered the streets of Istanbul, sword tucked under his robe. Not just to observe, but to enforce. It's said, quietly, that he executed violators on the spot. Yes, for coffee, or at least for disobeying his laws in general. But the effect? Chilling. You're sitting quietly now, pretending not to notice the two men near the window slowly, wrapping up their game of backgammon. One of them sips from a clay cup. Then, upon hearing footsteps outside, quickly places it under his cloak. Nobody breathes, but the door doesn't open. The footsteps pass. Everyone lets out a silent sigh of relief. You're beginning to understand that coffee houses weren't just places for idle chat. They were symbols, representations of autonomy. To drink coffee was to say, I decide how I think, what I say, and when I sleep. And to a nervous sultan, that kind of independence is unsettling. Yet people kept drinking. They started hiding the sezvis, those brass coffee pots, behind curtains. Cups were made smaller, to be sipped quickly and concealed. Some cafes morphed into barber shops or weaving stalls, with hidden doors to back rooms where coffee was served with a wink. A fringe tidbit that survives from this time. Some Ottomans, determined to keep their addiction discreet, began disguising coffee as soup. They'd add a dollop of goat's milk and a pinch of lentils, just to confuse any nosy official. Imagine the flavour, mocha lentil latte with a hint of panic. You walk past a courtyard where two men are pouring what looks suspiciously like broth into tiny bowls. No bread, no spoons, just anxious sipping. You give them a nod. They don't smile back. The city is clever like that. Bands never stopped its rhythms, only slowed them, changed their cadence. Coffee culture didn't vanish. It just ducked beneath the radar, waiting for safer days. There's an old woman near the fish market who still tells fortunes from coffee grounds, though now she claims she's reading stew patterns. You watch as she turns a tiny cup upside down, the sludge oozing slowly into the saucer. She squints, murmurs something about an upcoming journey, and a man with 3 noses. You're not sure whether to laugh or worry, and always, in the background, the sense that this too shall pass. Murad's bans were fierce but brief. His reign ended in 1640, and with him gone, the empire's grip on coffee loosened. But during his time, fear brewed deeper than the coffee. You find yourself walking uphill, toward the old district of Beyazıt. Here, the buildings lean on each other like sleepy friends. You duck into a small archway and find a man selling books and ink, and, behind him, a narrow door leading into a dim room. You don't need to ask. He opens it for you. Inside, men sit quietly on cushions, sipping from small cups. No music, no talking, just the slow ritual of pouring, sipping, sighing. It's sacred. You found a hidden cafe, a legacy of those oppressive years. No signs, no menu, just trust. And here, the coffee is stronger. Not because it's roasted longer, but because it carries something extra. Defiance. Memory. The taste of whispered resistance. You sit, drink, and wonder what it must have felt like to sip. Here, while the Sultan prowled the streets with his sword tucked under his cloak. Was it bravery, stupidity, or just human nature refusing to bow too far? Some say Murad IV's bans helped preserve the empire's dignity. Others say he ruled with fear, and that the very fact people risked so much for a drink shows just how thirsty. They were for something more than law. But here's the quiet truth. You're still drinking, and so are they. You step out of the hidden cafe and into the bright glare of morning. Istanbul is waking up, again. The city's rhythms are eternal. No matter how many sultans come and go, the scent of roasted coffee seems to cling to its stones like memory. You pass a sleepy fisherman dragging a cart of glistening sardines. His eyes are still heavy, but his hands are practiced. And tucked in the corner of his cart, a thermos. Probably not soup. You smile to yourself. Now let's turn back the clock just a little. Before the crackdowns, before Murad's sword-swinging patrols. Let's peek inside the very first kahvehan, the original Ottoman coffee house, born in the heart of Istanbul around 1555. Two enterprising Syrians, Hakem and Shams, are credited with opening the first proper shop in the Tahtakale district. Their idea, simple. Boil the beans, serve it hot, sit people down, let them talk. That's it. No appetizers, no silk rugs for sale, just the drink and the drama. People didn't know what to make of it at first. The elders said it was a waste of time. The poets said it was divine inspiration in a cup. The imams furrowed their brows and consulted scripture. And the people? They flooded in. You take a seat on a cushion in this imagined past. The year is 1556. The floor is earthen. The ceiling is low. There's a cracked window letting in a sliver of dusty morning light. You sip the thick, dark brew from a ceramic cup without handles. It's gritty at the bottom, like a warning not to overstay your welcome. A man next to you leans in and whispers, "You know this drink makes men cleverer." He smells faintly of cloves and conspiracy. You nod. Of course it does. These early coffee houses weren't glamorous, but they were electric. News arrived here before it reached the palace. Merchants swapped gossip from Cairo. Sailors brought tales from Venice. Philosophers argued under their breath, pretending they weren't undermining centuries of tradition. And the games, so many games. Chess, checkers, dominoes, and a peculiar one where you must name 5 spices faster than the other man can name 5 profits. There's no prize, just pride. You sip again and feel it. The pulse of a city beginning to stretch its limbs and ask questions. Historians still debate whether these first coffee houses were truly egalitarian spaces, or if they mostly served middle-class men with enough time and coin to lounge. But the sense of access was powerful. Here, in a city ruled by divine decree and heavy ritual, suddenly anyone with a few coins could sit down and speak freely, more or less. A fringe anecdote floats through your memory. Something about a coffee house in Galata that had a wall of whispers, where customers wrote anonymous messages on scraps of cloth and pinned them to a wooden beam. Lost love, secret loyalties, unpopular opinions. Some were torn down by nervous owners. Others, they stayed up for years. You're walking now, deeper into the city. The hills roll and twist under your feet. You pass a bathhouse, a bookstore, a spice merchant selling something that smells suspiciously like ground cardamom mixed with mischief. Every corner seems to echo with stories. You overhear a man explaining to a friend how to brew the perfect cup. First, cold water, then the freshest roast you can find. Sugar if you must. And stir before the boil, not after, or the foam will shame your ancestors. In another alley, a boy shouts prices for menengish, a caffeine-free coffee made from roasted wild pistachio seeds for those afraid of imperial crackdown or heart palpitations. It tastes a bit like burnt walnuts and despair, but it's legal, technically. Meanwhile, the real coffee trade is booming. The beans arrive from Yemen, sometimes smuggled, sometimes taxed beyond reason. Caravans snake through Damascus, Aleppo, Baghdad. The journey is long, but the profit, heavenly. Coffee becomes a business, big, bold, and everywhere. You reach the docks again. Crates from across the Red Sea arrive daily. Porters carry them like treasure. The customs inspectors peek inside the burlap sacks, pretending not to sniff too deeply. But the government starts to notice more than just the chatter. They notice how much money is flowing. And whenever money flows without the palace's full control, someone sharpens a pen or a blade, laws are proposed, licenses are demanded, inspectors are hired. Suddenly brewing coffee becomes a bureaucratic sport. Your sesve better be certified, your beans traced, your water source pure, and your clientele politically docile. Still, the people brew. Always, the people brew. You pause to take it all in. The swirl of smoke, the clink of cups, the soft murmur of verses half remembered. Ottoman Istanbul is not a city that sleeps. It dozes, it naps, it yawns. But with coffee pulsing through its veins, it never truly rests. Neither do you. Your eyes may be heavy, your breath slow, but your mind, alert, curious, comforted. You follow the trail of beans and stories onward, deeper into the centuries, where brewers become rebels and sultans learn the hard way. It's never just a drink, it's a movement. You're settling into a slow afternoon rhythm now, the city unfolding like a well-loved book, page by page. The Sultan's bands and the birth of coffee houses have set the stage, but the story is far from over. Coffee is weaving itself into the very fabric of Ottoman life, layered and complex, like the intricate patterns of the carpets beneath your feet. Let's wander next into the world of Ottoman law, where coffee was more than just a beverage. It was a legal puzzle wrapped in the aroma of roasted beans. You see, the authorities weren't just worried about caffeine or rebellious talk. They were concerned about the social order, and coffee houses were testing its limits. Picture a dusty courtroom in Istanbul around 1630. The judge's robes brush against the stone floor as he listens to complaints about unruly coffee drinkers. Someone accuses a cafe owner of allowing seditious conversations, another of serving illegal coffee blends. The room is heavy with tension and the faint smell of burnt cardamom. Ottoman law, with its blend of Islamic Sharia and sultanic decrees, treated coffee with an unusual mixture of suspicion and fascination. You might be surprised to learn that, at times, coffee was considered a sort of poisonous novelty. A fringe opinion held by some religious scholars questioned if coffee was a stimulant or even a forbidden substance. Historians still argue whether these opinions were genuinely theological or politically motivated. Meanwhile, the penalties for illegal coffee brewing weren't always as severe as Murad IV's feared executions. Often, offenders found themselves jailed, fined, or publicly shamed. There's a record of men being imprisoned simply for owning unlicensed coffee pots, or for hosting gatherings where the wrong topics were discussed over coffee. You picture a man, handcuffed, being led through Istanbul's streets, his prized chesve confiscated and smashed for good measure. The irony isn't lost on you. Coffee, meant to bring comfort and warmth, has become a symbol of resistance. But here's a curious twist. Despite the bans and punishments, coffeehouse culture spread. More than just drink spots, these cafes became hubs of intellectual and social life. Poets, musicians, and storytellers gathered in dim corners, sharing verses and melodies over steaming cups. You can almost hear the soft plucking of an oud, the murmur of a tale unfolding. And speaking of tales, one odd legal case from the era has survived the ages. It involves a man accused of brewing coffee for a group that allegedly planned a rebellion. The defense? He claimed he was just experimenting with new blends and had no idea about any political plotting. The judge reportedly laughed and let him go, saying, "If your coffee is as strong as your claims, I may need a cup." A tiny detail worth savouring. Coffeehouse licenses sometimes bore elaborate seals and signatures, decorated with calligraphy and floral motifs. These weren't just bureaucratic stamps. They were works of art, tokens of trust between the government and cafe owners. You walk through the Grand Bazaar, the sprawling marketplace buzzing with life. Here, merchants shout prices for coffee, beans imported from Yemen and Mocha. The scent of spices mingles with the promise of adventure. You notice a small shop selling rare porcelain cups, prized for their ability to hold heat and showcase the rich colour of the brew. Coffee, it seems, was also an aesthetic experience, and yet the legal tightrope continued. Officials patrolled the streets, papers in hand, ready to pounce on unauthorised cafes or illicit brewing equipment. Some coffeehouse owners bribed their way to safety. Others adapted, turning their shops into multi-purpose venues offering sweets or tobacco to distract the authorities. You pause at a fountain where women quietly fill jars of water. It's whispered that women brewed their own secret coffee gatherings away from the public eye, hidden behind veils and locked doors. Though the male-dominated public cafes are well documented, women's coffee culture remains an intriguing mystery. Historians still debate the extent and nature of these private gatherings. In fact, some believe that the secret coffee rituals of Ottoman women helped shape the broader culture in ways never recorded. Maybe those clandestine conversations sowed seeds of change, a quieter kind of rebellion. You sip your own cup now, imagining the lives touched by these bitter warm brews, the rebels, the poets, the bakers, the silent watchers in shadowed corners. Coffee is more than a drink. It's a story steeped in resistance, law, culture, and a little bit of mischief. And as you lean back, letting the taste linger, you realize that understanding this history means tasting the human desire for connection, no matter the cost. The sun is setting now, casting a soft golden glow over the city's rooftops and minarets. You stroll toward the quieter quarters of Istanbul, where the scent of roasting coffee mingles with the salty sea breeze. The bustling noise softens, replaced by the low hum of evening prayers and distant laughter. This is where you find yourself drawn to the quieter, more intimate side of Ottoman coffee culture. The private gatherings, the backroom conversations, the whispered secrets shared. over small, steaming cups. Unlike the lively public coffee houses filled with merchants and poets, these private circles were more selective, often gathering scholars, religious leaders, and even members of the palace elite. They met to discuss philosophy, science, and theology, sometimes even the forbidden ideas that might earn them trouble if spoken aloud elsewhere. You slip quietly into one such gathering, the room dimly lit by candlelight, the walls lined with books and delicate tapestries. Around the cushions sit men in long robes, their faces thoughtful as they pass around the sezva, the small brass pot bubbling gently. Coffee here is not just a drink, it is a ritual. The preparation is meticulous, each step a dance between heat, water, and ground beans, demanding patience and respect. The foam on the surface, called kaimak, is prized, and the first sip is taken slowly, savoring both the taste and the moment. One scholar recounts a story. When Sultan Murad IV banned coffee, some palace insiders continued to enjoy it secretly, even hiding sezves beneath their robes during court sessions. It was a dangerous game, a quiet defiance. Coffee is the fuel of the mind, one whispers, and the mind is a kingdom of its own. Historians still debate whether these elite coffee gatherings were influential in shaping Ottoman intellectual life, or if they remained insular circles disconnected from the broader population. But there's an intriguing fringe story that survives, a tale of a mysterious coffee blend said to have been created for the Sultan himself. It was said to include exotic spices and rare herbs, meant to sharpen the senses and calm the nerves. No recipe survives, but some believe this royal brew was a secret weapon against insomnia and stress. You imagine the Sultan seated in a lavish chamber, sipping this mysterious concoction under the flicker of oil lamps, the weight of empire pressing down but momentarily softened by the cup in his hand. Meanwhile, beyond these elite circles, coffee was becoming a social equalizer in the city streets. You notice the contrast, the formal gatherings above, and the lively street-side cafes below, where men from all walks of life shared stories and laughter. The more you explore, the more you realize coffee was weaving a complex web through Ottoman society, at once a symbol of power and rebellion, tradition and change. A curious detail you catch on your way out. Some coffeehouse owners began keeping small journals, recording the daily conversations, poems, and even jokes overheard in their shops. These coffeehouse chronicles offer a rare glimpse into the everyday lives and thoughts of ordinary people. Unfortunately, very few survive, lost to time or censorship. As you step back into the cooling night air, you take one last sip from your cup and reflect on the journey so far. Coffee is more than a warm drink in this city. It's a living history, a mirror of the people's hopes, fears, and dreams. And as your eyes grow heavy, the gentle clink of cups and soft murmur of voices linger in your ears, a lullaby brewed from centuries of stories. Night deepens, and you find yourself wandering toward the quieter neighborhoods of Istanbul, where the soft glow of lanterns flickers through narrow alleys. The city hums gently in the background, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifts from open windows. Here, the pulse of coffee culture takes on a more personal rhythm, weaving itself into the daily routines and rituals of Ottoman families. You pause outside a modest home where a family prepares coffee in the small kitchen. The mother carefully roasts the beans over a tiny brazier, her hands steady and practiced. The room is filled with warmth and the soft crackle of the fire. You can almost hear the whispered conversations and laughter that will soon fill the space. Coffee, in the Ottoman household, was a sign of hospitality and care. Serving it to guests was an art form, and the preparation a ritual that spoke of respect. It wasn't just about the drink, but the moment, the connection between host and visitor, the pause in the busy day to share warmth and stories. You imagine the delicate porcelain cups, often hand-painted and cherished like treasures, passed around with reverence. The foam on the coffee, a sign of skillful brewing, was admired, and spilling a drop was a small misfortune, almost a bad omen. In these homes, coffee became a marker of social status too. A family's ability to serve quality coffee reflected their standing and taste. You might be surprised to learn that some households even employed servants trained in the delicate art of coffee preparation, complete with their own sets of specialized tools. Historians still argue about how widespread home coffee culture was among different social classes. While the elite had elaborate coffee ceremonies, everyday families likely enjoyed simpler versions, perhaps with fewer spices and a more modest setup. There's an endearing anecdote about a young apprentice in a wealthy household who, in his eagerness, added far too much sugar to the brew. The resulting sweetness was so shocking that it became the subject of teasing for weeks, proof that even in a culture so steeped in tradition, mistakes and humour thrived. You also catch whispers of women's roles in coffee culture, often overlooked, in official records. In many families, women were the keepers of the coffee tradition, crafting blends and concocting secret recipes passed down through generations. Some women used coffee grounds for beauty treatments, claiming it softened skin or chased away wrinkles, a fringe belief that survives in some folk remedies today. Outside, the neighbourhood streets begin to quiet. Children chase each other under. The watchful eyes of elders and the last cafe patrons make their way home. The clink of cups and soft murmur of conversation fades into the night. You take a final slow sip of your imaginary coffee, savouring the connection between past and present, the comfort of ritual and the warmth of shared moments. Coffee isn't just a drink here. It's a thread weaving together the tapestry of family, community, and culture. And with that thought, you feel the gentle pull of sleep as the city and its stories cradle you softly in their timeless embrace. The soft light of dawn barely peeks over the horizon as you find yourself wandering along the banks of the Bosphorus, the water shimmering with early morning calm. The world is still waking up, but the coffee culture of Istanbul has already begun its day, moving through bustling markets, street vendors, and quiet corners alike. Today, your journey takes you to the merchants and traders who played a crucial role in bringing coffee to the Ottoman Empire. The story of coffee isn't just about sultans and poets. It's about the vast network of commerce stretching from the Yemeni highlands to the heart of Istanbul. A journey of beans and bartering across deserts and seas. You picture camel caravans winding through the Arabian deserts, laden with sacks of precious coffee beans. These traders, often from Yemen's port city of Mocha, were the original pioneers of coffee's journey into the Ottoman world. They protected their cargo fiercely, knowing these beans were worth their weight in gold. The Ottoman Empire's strategic location made Istanbul a central hub where East met West. Coffee's arrival here sparked a new chapter, one fueled by the empire's vast trade networks. Ships from Egypt, Syria, and beyond brought not only coffee but also spices, sugar, and porcelain cups, each adding to the rich sensory tapestry of the coffee experience. You overhear a lively negotiation at the Grand Bazaar, where a merchant boasts about the quality of his latest shipment, aromatic, freshly roasted beans destined for the city's growing coffee houses. Buyers haggle with the precision of chess players, each trying to secure the best price without losing face. It's fascinating how coffee became a commodity tied to prestige and economy. The government taxed coffee imports heavily, sometimes fluctuating rates to control its spread. These taxes funded grand building projects and court entertainments, making coffee indirectly responsible for the city's architectural splendor. A quirky detail emerges. Some traders reportedly used secret markings on their sacks of beans to indicate quality and origin, a sort of early branding system. These symbols were a trusted sign among buyers, much like modern logos. Historians still argue about how much control the Ottoman authorities exerted over coffee trade routes. Some suggest a loosely regulated system allowed smuggling and black market trading to flourish, while others believe the empire maintained a firm grip to protect its economic interests. Back in Istanbul, you notice how the influx of coffee inspired innovation. Local artisans developed specialized equipment, from elegant brasseries to delicate ceramic cups, each crafted to enhance the brewing and drinking experience. Even the language evolved. Terms like kahve and fincan entered common speech, borrowed from Arabic and Turkish, but carrying new cultural meanings tied to coffee rituals. As the morning sun climbs higher, the city stirs with life, and you feel the pulse of commerce and culture intertwining with the humble coffee bean. With each sip, you taste not just flavor, but the stories of countless hands that carried coffee across deserts and seas, making it a beloved part of daily life. And as the day begins, you settle deeper into the warm embrace of history's gentle flow, ready to drift further into the tale. The day unfolds slowly now, and you drift with the rhythm of Istanbul's winding streets and cozy cafes. Your thoughts settle on the curious role of coffee in Ottoman social life, where it became much more than a drink. It was a stage for conversation, performance, and community. You imagine stepping into a bustling coffee house, the air thick with the rich scent of roasted beans and cardamom. Around you, men of all walks of life gather, scribes, merchants, artisans, and even government clerks, each drawn by the promise of warmth, conversation, and a temporary escape from the day's worries. Coffee houses, or kavahain, were often called schools of the wise by locals. Here, you could hear spirited debates on poetry, politics, and religion, accompanied by the occasional pluck of an oud or the rhythmic tapping of backgammon pieces. The atmosphere was lively, yet relaxed, a delicate balance of community and reflection. But coffee houses were not without their quirks. Authorities often viewed them as potential hotbeds of dissent. Officials worried that gossip and political plotting might stir unrest. Yet banning coffee houses outright proved impossible. The people's love for the drink and its social space was too strong. One particularly charming story involves a coffeehouse owner who hosted impromptu poetry contests. Patrons would take turns reciting verses, earning applause or gentle jeers. The owner, a former soldier, claimed coffeehouses were the perfect places to brew minds as well as coffee. Historians still debate the extent to which coffeehouses influenced political movements. Some argue they were crucial spaces for early public discourse, while others suggest their impact has been romanticized. A fun tidbit you might enjoy. Some coffeehouses introduced unique entertainment forms, like shadow puppet shows called karagöz, which mixed humor and satire to gently poke fun at society's quirks. The flickering shadows cast on the walls added a mystical ambience to the night. And the food. Coffee was often accompanied by sweet treats like lokum, the famous Turkish delight, or nuts and dried fruits. These snacks softened the bitterness of the brew and added to the sensory experience. You might be amused to learn that in some coffee houses, patrons were known to bring their own personalized cups, embroidered cloth holders, or decorated cases, making each visit feel special and personal. As you sip your imaginary coffee here, you realize these places were a microcosm of Ottoman society, spaces where tradition and innovation met, where serious talk mingled with laughter, and where community was brewed slowly, cup by cup. And as the afternoon sun dips lower, you feel a gentle warmth spread through you, the kind only a good story and a perfect cup of coffee can bring. The afternoon light fades gently, and you wander toward the quieter corners of the city, where you find yourself drawn to the curious regulations and laws that shaped the Ottoman coffee world. Coffee was beloved, yes, but also closely watched, by rulers wary of its social power and influence. Imagine standing outside a courthouse, hearing the murmur of a trial concerning coffee brewing, a scene surprisingly common during certain periods. The Sultan and his advisors saw coffee as a potential disruptor, a drink that inspired spirited discussion and sometimes dissent, so they imposed laws regulating its sale, preparation, and consumption. You hear the clinking of iron as you picture the metal sesvares and cups that could be confiscated if the law was broken. Early bans on coffee were not just about health concerns, as some might think, but about control over the population's mood and conversations. One particularly fascinating detail: Sultan Murad IV, infamous for his strictness, personally enforced a coffee ban in the 17th century. He rode through the streets of Istanbul with a fierce entourage, punishing those caught brewing or drinking coffee. Men were sometimes jailed or fined, and coffee houses shuttered. Historians still debate whether these harsh measures were genuinely effective or if they only drove coffee culture underground, making it all the more popular in secret. An amusing story from this time tells of a man who disguised his coffee making with clever tricks, using herbal infusions as cover or brewing at odd hours. He was nicknamed the Coffee Ghost, a whispered legend among secret coffee enthusiasts. The laws fluctuated with time and ruler, creating a patchwork of regulations that varied across the empire. Some provinces were more lenient, while others cracked down heavily, reflecting local attitudes and political climates. You also learn of interesting legal documents detailing coffee's import taxes and tariffs, showing how much revenue the government hoped to gain despite fears about its social effects. Yet, these restrictions never stopped the Ottomans' passion for coffee. Instead, they added a layer of intrigue and rebellion to the drink's story. You picture a secret coffee circle, meeting by candlelight, sharing sips and stories while the city sleeps. A reminder that the allure of coffee and conversation cannot be easily controlled. As night deepens, you feel the echoes of these centuries-old laws ripple through time, mingling with the present-day calm, inviting you to relax and savor the journey. The scent of coffee lingers, soft and comforting, promising more tales as the night stretches on. Night deepens further, and your journey drifts into the world of Ottoman medical beliefs surrounding coffee. You find yourself in a quiet apothecary filled with the soft rustling of parchment and the faint aroma of herbs mingling with the unmistakable scent of coffee beans. In Ottoman times, coffee was considered not just a social beverage, but also a medicinal potion. Doctors and herbalists prescribed it for a variety of ailments, from sluggish digestion to headaches, and even as a remedy for melancholy. You can almost see the physician's thoughtful face as he prepares a cup with a measured hand, blending coffee with spices like cinnamon or cloves. One well-known medical fact: coffee was believed to stimulate the nervous system and improve mental clarity, making it popular among scholars and bureaucrats who needed long hours of concentration. It was sometimes called the brain's best friend, though, of course, with the gentle warning not to overindulge. A quirky tidbit emerges here. Some practitioners recommended coffee enemas as a cure for various conditions, a practice that sounds odd to modern ears but was relatively common at the time. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or limited to specific medical circles. The hum of quiet conversation around you touches on the overlap between science and superstition. Some believed coffee could balance bodily humours or ward off evil spirits, while others insisted it had calming effects despite its caffeine content. You overhear a story about an Ottoman noblewoman who credited coffee with easing her chronic insomnia. Her tailor-made coffee blend reportedly included rose petals and saffron, both prized for their soothing properties. Though the recipe is lost, the tale hints at how coffee was personalized to suit individual health needs. Interestingly, the bitter taste of coffee was sometimes softened with sugar or honey, not just for flavor, but also for its believed healing qualities. You imagine the gentle clinking of small sugar bowls passed among friends in health and in cheer. And as you sip this imaginary blend, you reflect on how the medicine of coffee was as much about ritual and care as chemical properties, a blend of body and soul. The apothecary's quiet settles around you, and you feel the comforting weight of centuries-old knowledge mingling with the peaceful night. The Ottoman world's intricate relationship with coffee continues to unfold, inviting you deeper into its gentle, aromatic embrace. As the night deepens, your mind drifts to the role of coffee in Ottoman religious life, a surprisingly complex and quietly fascinating relationship. You find yourself standing just outside a mosque, where the call to prayer softly echoes through the cool air. Nearby, coffee houses are buzzing gently, a stone's throw from places of worship. Coffee's arrival in the Ottoman world sparked lively discussions among religious scholars. Some questioned whether the bitter brew was permissible, given its stimulating effects and novelty. You can almost hear the soft debates unfolding between learned men in flowing robes, sipping cautiously, weighing tradition against new pleasures. Mainstream religious authorities eventually declared coffee halal, allowing it to become part of daily life. It was even praised for helping worshippers stay awake during long prayer sessions and study. The connection between coffee and spiritual alertness became a subtle, almost sacred thread in Ottoman society. A curious detail you might enjoy. Early fatwas, religious rulings, were issued on coffee, carefully discussing its effects on the mind and body. Some clerics likened the coffee bean's bitter awakening to a spiritual metaphor, an alertness not just of body but of soul. Historians still argue whether the acceptance of coffee in religious contexts was swift or gradual, influenced by local customs and interpretations. Some regions were more cautious, while others embraced it enthusiastically. You also learn of amusing tales, like one about a particularly devout imam who insisted that his coffee be brewed by a trusted servant only, fearing any slight change could disturb his concentration during prayer. He was known for his stern looks, but soft spot for a good cup of kava. Interestingly, some Sufi orders adopted coffee as part of their rituals, using it to enhance meditation and group sessions, blending the physical with the mystical in their ceremonies. As you imagine the rich tapestry of sound, the muezzin's call, the clatter of coffee cups, and murmured prayers, you feel a gentle harmony between faith and daily life. Coffee, in its many forms, had found a place in the heart of Ottoman spirituality, a quiet companion to both contemplation and community. And as you exhale slowly, the night wrapping around you like a soft blanket, you feel the peaceful rhythm of history and belief interwoven with every sip. The night grows stiller, and your mind drifts to the fascinating world of Ottoman coffee ceremonies, where every movement and gesture was filled with meaning. Imagine yourself in a grand room filled with soft cushions and glowing lanterns, the air thick with the aroma of roasted beans and gentle murmurs. Coffee ceremonies were more than mere preparation. They were performances of hospitality and status. You watch as the host carefully measures the grounds, pours the water, and gently stirs the kesve over a small flame, the steam curling upward like a whispered secret. In elite circles, the ceremony could last hours, with precise etiquette dictating who would receive the first cup, how it was served, and the order of guests. It was a dance of respect, patience, and subtle power plays. One fascinating fact: the foam on top of the coffee was considered a sign of skill, and a host who failed to produce a thick, creamy froth risked embarrassment. You might chuckle at tales of guests discreetly flicking foam onto rivals in jest, a gentle form of mischief. Historians still debate how much these ceremonies reflected genuine cultural values versus performative displays aimed at impressing visitors and asserting social hierarchy. The ceremony was often accompanied by storytelling, poetry recitals, or music, transforming the act of drinking coffee into a multi-sensory experience that soothed both body and mind. You imagine a noblewoman quietly observing from behind a screen, the faint clinking of her delicate coffee cup adding to the ambience. Women's participation in these rituals was often indirect but nonetheless important, influencing the atmosphere and offering subtle commentary. A quirky detail emerges. Some ceremonies included fortune-telling by interpreting coffee grounds left in the cup, a pastime blending superstition with social bonding. As the ceremony draws to a close, the warmth of the coffee and company lingers, a soft glow in the twilight of the evening. You settle into this gentle scene, feeling the centuries-old ritual wrap around you like a cozy shawl, a quiet reminder of the human need for connection and comfort. The story flows onward, as steady and soothing as the final sip of coffee on a calm night. As the night wears on, you find yourself drifting into the quieter, more domestic side of Ottoman coffee culture. How it permeated everyday life beyond the grand ceremonies and bustling coffee houses. Picture a modest Ottoman household bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps where the family gathers for their evening ritual. Coffee here is a gentle thread weaving through daily routines, from the quiet mornings to the restful evenings. You can almost hear the clink of the sezve on a small hearth, the steady hiss of water boiling, and the soft murmur of family members sharing stories after a long day. In the Ottoman home, coffee was both comfort and custom, a moment of pause in the hustle of life. Women often prepared the brew, managing the delicate balance of flavor and strength while tending to other chores. It was a subtle way they shaped the household atmosphere, infusing care into every cup. One delightful fact: it was common for new brides to bring special coffee sets as part of their dowry, carefully chosen to showcase their skill and taste. These sets were treasured heirlooms, passed down through generations, rich with memories and family stories. Historians still debate how coffee's domestic role differed from its public persona. Was it primarily a male social drink, or did women have a more active though less visible role than traditionally acknowledged? You might smile at tales of family disputes settled over a shared cup, where the bitterness of coffee was softened by the sweetness of reconciliation and laughter. Interestingly, recipes varied widely. Some households added spices like cardamom or cloves, while others preferred it plain and strong. Each cup was a personal expression, a reflection of family heritage and taste. You imagine the comforting routine of brewing coffee at dawn, the aroma weaving through the rooms, gently nudging everyone awake, a quiet start to the day. And as the household settles for the night, the coffee ritual leaves behind a lingering warmth, a silent promise of connection and continuity. The softness of these intimate moments offers a gentle counterpoint to the public spectacle of coffee culture, reminding you of the many layers that history brews together. With that comforting thought, you sink deeper into the soothing rhythm of the past. The night deepens as you now glide into the intriguing world of Ottoman coffee trade routes, a network that stitched together continents and cultures through the simple bean. Imagine yourself aboard a wooden ship, sails billowing softly in the warm Mediterranean breeze, carrying precious sacks of coffee destined for Istanbul's bustling markets. The journey of coffee from its origins in Ethiopia and Yemen to the heart of the Ottoman Empire was a slow, winding adventure. Merchants traversed desert caravans, rugged mountain passes, and treacherous seas, braving bandits, storms, and customs checks. Each sack of coffee carried not only beans, but stories and hopes. One significant historical fact is that the Ottoman control of the Red Sea and Mediterranean trade routes gave them a near monopoly on coffee in the 16th and 17th centuries. Istanbul became a central hub, a melting pot of flavors and influences. A quirky detail: some merchants use secret markings on their sacks to indicate the coffee's origin and quality, a form of early branding. You might smile at tales of rival traders engaging in friendly sabotage, swapping sacks or mixing beans to confuse competitors. Historians still debate how much the coffee trade contributed to the empire's economy versus the cultural cachet it provided. Was coffee more valuable as a commodity or as a symbol of Ottoman sophistication? Along the way, coffee encountered local tastes and rituals. In Cairo, for example, it mingled with spices and sweets, while in Baghdad, it was embraced with its own set of customs. Each stop added a new layer to coffee's evolving story. The caravan's slow pace meant coffee's journey was as much about anticipation as arrival, with each new cup savoured as a rare and precious delight. You imagine the ship's crew sharing stories over a steaming cup, the dark liquid a comforting balm amid the uncertainty of travel. Back in Istanbul, the arrival of fresh coffee beans was an event, sparking excitement among merchants and consumers alike. As the night stretches on, you feel the interconnectedness of history's many threads woven together by coffee's rich aroma and enduring appeal. The story flows on, inviting you to drift further into this world of trade, taste, and timeless tradition. The quiet night now guides you to the intriguing world of Ottoman coffeehouse culture, a place where the air was thick with the smell of roasted beans and lively, if not exactly raucous, conversations. Picture yourself stepping into one of these establishments, a dimly lit room filled with soft cushions, low tables, and the gentle hum of people quietly exchanging ideas. Coffeehouses or Kahvehain were far more than just spots to sip a warm brew. They were vibrant social hubs where news, stories, and gossip flowed as freely as the coffee. Men from all walks of life gathered here, from scholars and poets to merchants and government officials, making these places crucial centers for cultural exchange. One well-known historical fact is that by the 17th century, coffee houses had become so popular that authorities occasionally feared their influence, associating them with political plotting or unrest. This led to intermittent attempts to regulate or close them, though such efforts mostly failed. A fun, lesser-known detail: some coffee houses employed storytellers, called medders, who entertained patrons with tales, jokes, and moral lessons, blending humour with subtle critique. You might imagine the gentle chuckles rising in the warm air, a quiet rebellion of wit and wisdom. Historians still debate whether these coffee houses were genuinely democratic spaces, or if social hierarchies persisted strongly within their walls. Some argue they offered a rare level of free expression, while others point out who was and wasn't welcome. Interestingly, many coffee houses also featured backgammon boards and musical instruments, adding layers of leisure to the experience. The soft clatter of dice and the mellow notes of an oud provided a calming backdrop. You can almost feel the soothing rhythm of coffee rituals unfolding, slow pouring, delicate sipping, and the occasional thoughtful silence punctuated by conversation. The Ottoman coffee house was a place where time slowed, ideas blossomed, and friendships formed, a haven for those seeking solace in community and caffeine. As you settle into this scene, the soft murmur and aroma wrap around you like a warm shawl, inviting you to relax deeper into the night. The gentle night continues, and you drift into the intriguing story of women and coffee in the Ottoman Empire, a quieter chapter, often overlooked but rich with subtle influence and significance. Picture a cozy room filled with the soft glow of lantern light, where women gather not in the public coffee houses, but in private homes, sharing stories and laughter over steaming cups. While men occupied the bustling Kavahan, women carved out their own intimate coffee rituals behind closed doors. These gatherings were essential spaces for socializing, bonding, and even political discussion, though historians still debate how openly women engaged in these conversations. One interesting fact is that women often prepared the coffee, mastering the art of brewing and presentation, shaping their household's social atmosphere. You can almost see the careful hands measuring grounds, stirring with practiced ease, and passing cups with a smile. A quirky detail. Some women created secret recipes, blending coffee with fragrant spices or sweet syrups, crafting unique flavors passed down through generations. These recipes were closely guarded family treasures. Stories tell of women using coffee rituals to mark important life events, from weddings to mourning periods, adding layers of meaning to the drink beyond its simple taste. You might smile at the image of a grandmother teaching her grandchildren the fine art of coffee, fortune-telling, interpreting the shapes left in the cup as gentle whispers from the past. Historians still argue about the extent of women's roles in the wider coffee culture, with some suggesting their influence was underestimated in traditional accounts. This private world of coffee offered women a subtle form of empowerment, a way to shape social life in a male-dominated society. As the night deepens, you feel the warmth of these hidden ceremonies, a soft current beneath the louder public narrative. The story of Ottoman coffee is richer for these quiet contributions, inviting you to savor the blend of culture, tradition, and humanity that lingers in every cup. You sink deeper into the peaceful rhythm of the past, carried gently on the aroma of history. The stillness of the night envelops you as you now explore the curious Ottoman coffee-related laws, those surprising regulations that shaped how, when, and even where coffee could be enjoyed. Imagine walking through a quiet Istanbul street lined with official notices and curious whispers about the latest decree. Ottoman authorities occasionally saw coffee not only as a delightful beverage, but also as a potential disruptor of social order. At various times, laws restricted coffeehouse hours, limited who could sell coffee, and even outlawed brewing in certain neighborhoods. A key historical fact: Sultan Murad IV famously banned coffee in the early 17th century, alongside tobacco and alcohol, In an effort to restore public morality, the bans were strict, punishable by imprisonment or worse, but often widely ignored or circumvented. You might chuckle at stories of clandestine coffee brewers hiding in basements, secret coffee meetings held under the cover of night, and clever citizens inventing all kinds of excuses to slip in a cup. Historians still debate the true effectiveness of these bans. Were they symbolic gestures of power, or did they genuinely reduce coffee's popularity? The general consensus leans toward the former, as coffee houses thrived despite restrictions. Another quirky tidbit. In some cases, coffee sellers had to register with local officials and pay taxes, creating one of the earliest forms of regulated food commerce. The bureaucracy around a humble cup of coffee was surprisingly complex. You imagine a scribe meticulously logging coffee merchants' licenses, the scratch of quill on parchment mixing with the gentle murmur of brewing. Interestingly, some laws aim to prevent rivalries from escalating into violence within coffee houses by setting rules on behavior and patron limits, reflecting concerns about coffee's social power. As you wander through these quiet alleyways of regulation and rebellion, you sense the tension between authority and the people's love for coffee. A delicate dance as old as the brew itself. The house night hums softly around you, the story of Ottoman coffee laws adding a rich texture to your unfolding journey. You sip this history slowly, savoring its bitter and sweet notes in the calm dark. As the night drifts on, you find yourself stepping into the shadowy realm of Ottoman coffee smugglers, the daring figures who risked imprisonment and worse to keep the beloved bean flowing. Picture a moonlit dock where crates are quietly transferred, under the watchful eyes of guards, the salty air thick with whispered deals. Coffee's high demand and occasional bans created a lucrative black market. Smugglers used hidden compartments in caravans, secret coastal routes, and clever disguises to transport coffee into the cities where it was eagerly awaited. One fascinating fact: some smugglers formed tight-knit networks, almost like secret societies, with coded messages and signals to evade authorities. You can almost hear the quiet exchanges, the subtle nods, the hurried footsteps. Historians still debate the scale of this illicit trade, whether it was a small, localized phenomenon or a widespread, organized operation. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. An amusing detail: legend tells of a smuggler who once hid coffee beans in a shipment of sheep wool, only to have the scent betray him when the wool was unloaded, much to the surprise of everyone involved. The risks were high, but so were the rewards. Coffee was a precious commodity, and its scarcity during bans only made it more desirable. You imagine a smuggler's secret stash tucked away in a hidden cellar, the rich aroma of freshly roasted beans, a constant reminder of the perilous journey. Interestingly, some smugglers doubled as coffeehouse owners, blending their love of the drink with a touch of rebellion. As you picture these shadowy figures moving through the night, you feel the thrill and tension woven into the history of the Ottoman coffee culture. The story, much like a well-brewed cup, is complex and layered, bittersweet, with a hint of adventure. And so, the night carries on, gentle and full of secrets. The calm night invites you now to explore the unique Ottoman coffee utensils, those carefully crafted tools and vessels that turned coffee brewing into an art form. Picture yourself tracing the smooth curves of a brass sesvi, feeling its cool, metal warm slowly over a tiny flame. The sesve, a small long-handled pot, was the heart of coffee preparation. Its shape and size influenced the flavor and foam, making it an essential tool for any coffee lover. Alongside it, delicate coffee cups, often made of porcelain or finely decorated ceramics, were designed to enhance the drinking experience. 1. Interesting fact. Ottoman coffee sets were sometimes lavishly decorated with intricate designs and precious metals, turning everyday objects into symbols of wealth and status. You might smile, imagining a sultan's ornate set shimmering in candlelight. Historians still argue how the designs evolved, whether influenced more by local artisans or by the flow of international styles along trade routes. Quirky details abound. Some coffee spoons were made with tiny hooks, allowing them to hang neatly from the cup's rim, a small convenience with a touch of elegance. You picture a skilled artisan meticulously hammering delicate patterns into a silver tray, the soft tapping blending with the steady hiss of brewing coffee. Coffee grinders, too, were essential, with hand-cranked devices designed to produce the perfect grind, fine enough for a strong brew, but not so powdery as to muddle the flavor. Imagine the satisfying whirl of a grinder, the scent of freshly ground beans filling the air, a small ritual in itself. Interestingly, some utensils were passed down through generations, cherished heirlooms connecting families to their past and the enduring tradition of coffee. As you gently explore these objects, you appreciate the blend of utility and beauty that accompanied every Ottoman coffee moment. The night deepens, and with it, the delicate art of coffee making unfolds quietly, like a whispered secret. As the night winds softly onward, you find yourself drawn to the story of Ottoman coffee's influence beyond the empire. How this humble beverage crossed borders and oceans, shaping tastes and cultures far and wide. Imagine a busy European port city in the 17th century, bustling with merchants eager to taste this exotic brew arriving from the East. Coffee reached Europe through Venetian traders and others who marveled at the dark, aromatic drink. It quickly stirred curiosity and excitement, though it sometimes sparked suspicion and misunderstanding among locals unaccustomed to its effects. One notable fact is that the first European coffee houses opened in Venice and London in the mid-1600s, becoming hubs for artists, thinkers, and revolutionaries. You can picture the gentle clinking of cups and the murmur of intellectual debate filling these new spaces. A quirky detail. Early Europeans called coffee the devil's drink, and in some places it was banned or taxed heavily, reflecting the same kind of caution Ottoman rulers once showed. Historians still debate how much Ottoman traditions influenced European coffee culture versus independent innovation. Did Europeans simply adopt Ottoman styles, or did they create new customs around coffee? Interestingly, Ottoman coffee also influenced ceremonies in places as far-flung as Russia, North Africa, and the Arabian Peninsula, each adding their own twist. You imagine travelers returning home with tales of Ottoman coffee houses, inspiring others to seek out the magical brew and the social rituals that accompanied it. This spread of coffee was more than commerce. It was cultural exchange, a gentle weaving of stories and traditions across borders. The night feels vast, full of whispered connections, as coffee continues its timeless journey, quietly shaping the world. You sip this thought slowly, savoring the richness of a story that flows as endlessly as the brew itself. The gentle night now invites you into the world of Ottoman coffee poetry and literature, where the drink inspired verses as rich and dark as the brew itself. Imagine sitting in a softly lit room, surrounded by stacks of ornate manuscripts and the faint scent of ink mingling with roasted beans. Ottoman poets often celebrated coffee in their work, weaving metaphors of love, longing, and life's bittersweet nature into their verses. Coffee wasn't just a drink, it was a muse, a symbol of warmth and companionship. One historical fact: some famous Ottoman poets like Nabi and Nedim penned odes specifically dedicated to coffee, praising its invigorating qualities and social magic. A quirky tidbit: coffee's foam was sometimes compared to a lover's smile or the morning mist, turning simple imagery into artful expressions. You might smile at the playful way poets imagined coffee as a mysterious enchantress. Historians still debate the extent to which coffee poetry reflected everyday life versus idealized court culture. Was this a genuine popular passion, or more, a refined literary game? Coffee's cultural symbolism extended beyond poetry. Coffee metaphors appeared in proverbs, songs, and theatrical performances, becoming part of the Ottoman emotional vocabulary. You picture a storyteller reciting a coffee-inspired tale, the rhythm of the words mingling with the soft clink of cups. Interestingly, coffee's role as a social lubricant inspired playful banter and wit in the coffeehouses, where poets sometimes competed in improvisation contests. This poetic side of coffee adds a delicate human touch to its story, reminding you that even the simplest pleasures can inspire great beauty. As the night deepens, the verses linger softly, like the last warm sip of a beloved cup. You drift further into this gentle embrace of words and warmth. The night's calm air carries you now into the fascinating realm of Ottoman coffee and medicine, where this beloved drink was credited with surprising health benefits and a few curious cures. Imagine a dimly lit apothecary, shelves lined with jars of herbs and spices, the air thick with fragrant blends, and the rich aroma of coffee brewing nearby. Ottoman physicians often recommended coffee for its stimulating properties, believing it could aid digestion, relieve headaches, and even enhance mental alertness. Coffee became a staple in medicinal recipes, blending tradition and practical healing. A historical fact to ponder: doctors like Ibn Sina influenced Ottoman medical thought, emphasizing coffee's role in balancing bodily humors, a concept still debated among scholars today. A quirky detail: some remedies combined coffee grounds with honey or rosewater, turning simple coffee into a sweet elixir, thought to soothe ailments or boost energy. You might smile at the image of a patient sipping a special coffee blend while listening to gentle advice from a kindly physician. Historians still argue about how widespread these medical uses truly were versus their more symbolic or ritualistic value. Coffee's association with health extended to preventative care as well. Some believed a daily cup could ward off laziness or melancholy, weaving coffee into the rhythm of life. You imagine a morning routine where brewing coffee was as much about ritual healing as waking up, a soothing start to the day. Interestingly, coffee's reputation as a health aid contributed to its social acceptance and growing popularity, despite occasional bans. As the night deepens, you sense the gentle power of this humble brew, comforting, healing, and connecting people across centuries. The story unfolds slowly, like the warmth spreading through your hands from a perfect cup. You sink deeper into the softness of this history, carried by aroma and memory. The night now invites you into the quieter corners of Ottoman society, where coffee intersected with art and craftsmanship beyond just the drink itself. Picture artisans in softly lit workshops, the rhythmic tapping of tools creating delicate, coffee-related treasures. Ottoman craftsmen produced exquisite coffee sets, from hand-painted porcelain cups to intricately carved wooden trays. These objects weren't merely functional, they were expressions of artistry and cultural pride, often gifted as tokens of respect or love. One well-known fact is that coffee sets could be lavish wedding presents or diplomatic gifts, symbolizing hospitality and refinement. You might imagine a beautifully wrapped box, unveiling gleaming brass and fine porcelain. A quirky detail. Some artisans included miniature scenes of daily coffee rituals or poetic inscriptions on the vessels, blending utility with storytelling. Imagine tracing your fingers over tiny painted figures frozen in a moment of leisure. Historians still debate how much these crafted items influence coffee culture's spread. Did the beauty of the utensils invite more people into the ritual, or did the ritual inspire more exquisite objects? Coffee art extended beyond utensils too. Miniature paintings sometimes depicted coffee houses and their patrons, offering a visual glimpse into social life. You picture an artist carefully adding strokes to capture the gentle steam rising from a cup, the soft glow of lanterns, and the serene faces of coffee lovers. Interestingly, coffee-related crafts remain treasured today, continuing a legacy of blending function and beauty. As the night wraps around you like a velvet cloak, the delicate handiwork reminds you that even the smallest things can hold rich histories. The story unfolds with quiet reverence, a final sip of warmth before the day ends. You drift softly, surrounded by echoes of artistry and the comforting scent of coffee's past. As the night draws near its gentle close, you settle into the story of how Ottoman coffee culture slowly transformed and mingled with modern times, shaping the coffee rituals we know today. Picture the last flickering candle casting soft shadows over old manuscripts and the faint hum of a city awakening to new ideas. The 19th and early 20th centuries brought changes. The empire's gradual modernization, increased European influence, and evolving social habits all affected how coffee was brewed, served, and enjoyed. One historical fact: the introduction of new brewing technologies and the rise of more public coffee houses turned coffee into an accessible pleasure for a broader population, blending tradition with innovation. A quirky detail. Some Ottoman-era coffee houses introduced live music and storytelling sessions, hinting at the multimedia cafes we now find worldwide. You might smile imagining an old storyteller weaving tales as softly as the steam from a cup. Historians still debate how much the traditional coffeehouse culture survived these changes, or whether it transformed into something entirely new. Coffee's journey from sultans' courts to street corners mirrors broader societal shifts, a gentle reminder of how culture adapts without losing its essence. You imagine patrons sitting in a lively cafe, savoring familiar tastes while embracing new customs, a beautiful blend of old and new. As you prepare to drift off, you realize this story, like coffee itself, is timeless, warming, comforting, and endlessly rich. So now, dimming your thoughts like fading candlelight, you settle into this last sip of history, peaceful and full. Wind down as your eyelids grow heavier and the night deepens around you. Let the gentle rhythm of the Ottoman coffee story lull you into rest. The scent of roasted beans, the soft clink of porcelain, and the whispered tales of past centuries weave a comforting tapestry. Remember, each cup you imagine holds not just flavor, but centuries of warmth, conversation, and quiet rebellion. Let your breath slow, your mind soften, and the peaceful history cradle you gently. Sleep now comes as naturally as the steam rising from a perfect cup, slow, warm, and full of calm. Tomorrow awaits with fresh stories, but for now, rest in the embrace of gentle history and sweet dreams.